In this video, we'll look at the remote control and secondary execution capabilities of ColorSpace. Both these exist within the profiling window within Graph Options. And you can see here that we have secondary execution and remote control. At the moment, the remote control is grayed out because we don't have a probe connected. So if we connect to the i1 Display Pro, and back to the options, we can see that remote control is now available. And this first window, we're going to make a servant. Now, servant and master defines which profile window is controlling which. So if we open a second profiling window, and we'll just move that out the way. And again, we need to connect to a probe because the remote control options will only become available when there is a probe connected. But because this is going to be the master, we're actually going to connect just to the virtual probe because we don't particularly care about the readings generated because we're interested in the probe associated with the servant window. So having connected that, we can now select master. And in this instance, we are working with a single ColorSpace installation, so a single instance of ColorSpace with two profiling windows open, connected to two different probes, one being the i1 Display Pro and the other being the virtual probe. The system with the virtual probe is the master, and the servant window is the one connected to the i1 D3. We'll come back to the ability to use two real probes or more in a moment, but for now what we're interested in is just using the servant window to remotely profile a display. At the moment we are using one instance of ColorSpace, but we could actually be using two different instances of ColorSpace, either on the same PC or, obviously more usefully, on two different PCs connected via a network or even connected over the internet. In that situation, the ID wouldn't just be the port ID, it would be the IP address of the remote installation plus the ID for the port. So, having connected everything up, we can define from the master the profile that we wish to generate, and we'll do a primary only, that's fine. So in the remote, we'll pop up the patch window with the probe sitting on top of it. Just so we can see it, we'll also pop up the patch window for the master profiling configuration. And now when we start to measure, you can see that the remote servant profiling window is plotting the measurements from the i1 D3, while the master window is plotting the random values generated by the virtual probe. Oh, nice cup of tea. There we go, characterization complete. And now in the servant window, we have the profile data for the display via the i1 D3, while in the master window we have the random generated information for the virtual probe. Obviously in the servant window we can now save the profile, rename it, whatever, as usual. Now that's all well and good, but if we were doing a remote calibration session where we have the master ColorSpace instance in the calibrator's office and the remote